Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Today I am going to be telling you about all of the horror that I've been watching recently. This is kind of a quick fire roundup of the movies that I've been watching, the horror movies that I've been watching, and yeah, telling you how I have enjoyed them, what they're about. I'm going to try and keep this really short because I don't want to be rambling for too long. So with that, I feel like I should get started. I do have my Letterboxd open on my laptop, so I'm just going to be kind of glancing and finding what movie I'm going to be talking about next. So in this video, I'm going to be starting at around April time, because I did start watching a lot more horror in and around this time. So I'm going to be rounding up the last couple of months of my horror movies. The first one that I want to tell you about is The First Omen. So this is a new release, and this came out I think in April of this year. It is essentially a prequel to The Omen. I did a whole video on The Omen before, so I will leave that linked in the cards. So I didn't enjoy watching the original Omen from the 70s, so I wasn't sure that this Omen, like the prequel, would be of interest to me. Somehow this movie gripped me and I really enjoyed all of this. It was dark from the beginning. The first scene was so intense that it really set the precedent for the movie. And throughout we kind of follow the development of where the Omen starts. So essentially we're following the mother of the demonic child from The Omen. So how she got pregnant and where she lived and what exactly happened to her. So it's such an interesting story. It has underlying themes that I feel are very necessary to talk about, and how they were delivered on screen were just so good. So I rated this movie a 4-star. The next movie that I watched was Baghead. I was anticipating this movie for a while. I really thought this would be something of interest to me. So it's centered around this young woman who learns about her deceased, estranged father, and that she has inherited a pub. So she goes and deals with his estate, and she learns that there is something unspeakable living in the basement of this pub, and the story kind of develops from there, and she has to kind of deal and now is in ownership of this thing. And this thing can shape itself into other entities, and it mimics people who have passed on. And so it's a very interesting storyline. But for me, I really disliked watching this movie. The overall execution and the development of the plot was just lacking. They had really bad jump scares in this, like they were so poor and too cliche that just did not sit well with me, and I really disliked this movie. So I only give this one a 1.5 star on Letterboxd. It's just not a good movie in my opinion. And then next in April I rewatched The Thing. This is one of my favorite movies. It's such a fun creature feature film, and again, I mean, it's one of my favorites, so I always give it a 5-star. And it's always one that I like to rewatch at least once a year. So yeah, it is one that I always go back to. Following that, I did rewatch Scream 2 and 3. I did watch Scream 1 in February times. So I rewatched Scream 2 and 3 in May. So I was catching up on those. And again, I don't really need to go into too much detail. Scream is such a fun franchise for me, something that I rewatch all the time. So yeah, they're always on this list for me each year. And then I watched another new release, which was Tarot. So this is a fun horoscope story. Tarot is like Final Destination meets scary stories to tell in the dark for me. This was a fun, cheesy, late teen movie. It's definitely made for like the young adults. It's really fun, and like I said, it's a cheesy movie. It does deliver on incredible character imagery in the different cards that are used, how they brought those characters and that imagery to life in the creatures that kill. So I really enjoyed that aspect of this movie. The location that it was filmed on was very atmospheric. Such a fun movie. I did have such low expectations, so for me it doesn't get a huge rating because I wasn't expecting much of it, and like I said, it didn't take itself too seriously. It's a fun, cheesy movie, something that you can watch easily. So I rated it a 3-star. It was definitely a fun time, and I think I would recommend it to people, especially beginners into the genre. The next horror movie that I watched was The Strangers Chapter 1. So, this movie, whilst keeping it short, is a direct remake of The Strangers from 2008. I loved the original Strangers. It was so scary and terrifying for me. So I was really hoping that this one would deliver, and it just didn't live up to the hype, does not live up to the original either. It's not terrible, okay? It has some good elements, it has some really bad elements as well. It does have moments of its scare factor, but it doesn't make you feel scared. Unlike the original The Strangers, this one just does not have the ability to emote you in that way. The setting was really good. I enjoyed where it was filmed and some of the acting in this, although some of it, like I said, just did not deliver on the scare factor. I wasn't really hooked and feeling terrified in the movie. I also really disliked how they had to redo Madeline Petch's makeup in between takes while she's covered in blood and fighting for her life, yet she does have such pretty hair and perfect makeup. Doesn't seem realistic, and I really dislike the fact that they did that. So, yep, just did not like that. I do feel like Madeline Petch is an incredible actor. She delivered well on the performance, and I feel like it sets her up perfectly to like move into other roles in horror. She could be the next big scream queen, but I just feel like this movie and the direction that they took just was not it. And then I watched Lovely, Dark and Deep, which was a surprise for me. This is it's actually my favorite horror movie from this year. It was so good, such a folkloric horror story that is set in the woods. And this ranger goes out, tries to solve something from her past, and gets sucked into this cosmic folk kind of horror. And it was incredible. Loved the imagery, the designs, the overall plot. Such a good movie. Highly recommend people watching this. I wish it got a bigger release because it is such a good movie. I did have to buy it on YouTube to watch it. So I would highly recommend to do that if you're a fan of folk horror. This one was incredible. The next movie I want to talk about is stop motion. So I watched this on Shudder, and it was something that I was anticipating because it does sound like an incredible movie. This was a very creepy but nonsensical movie for me. It's very cosmic and psychological, but it is an enjoyable watch. And I guess the only issue I really had with stop motion was the fact that the first half of it was really, really slow, but the second half was so fast paced and really hooked you into the story. And I feel like a lot of the best part of this movie was in the latter half of it. So, yeah, there was some issues for me in terms of plots and pacing. So much of the action was in the end, and I feel like that's where the best part of this movie was. But I did still give it a 3.5 star because it was such a fun watch and very creepy. And then I watched A Quiet Place Day 1, went out to the cinema to see this, and it was so good. Have given this a 4-star rating. It was a fun movie. It is so quiet. I really suggest seeing this in the cinema because it's such a different experience. Everyone is so quiet, and the movie is quiet itself. The anticipation that you feel as well in this movie was just so good. You really feel your heartstrings being pulled with some of the underlying storylines, and I feel like the cat deserves an Oscar because that performance was so nice. The next one, I finally got to see Lisa Frankenstein. This was a fun comedic story that is very nonsensical. For me, it was giving vibes of the 80s, and I was really feeling the Beetlejuice vibe in this story, so really loved it. It was a fun time. I watched this on the train down for work, um, and yeah, it was such a fun watch. Very creepy, lots of disturbing scenes, but it was a fun time nonetheless. So I would highly suggest watching this movie if you can. And so the last movie that I'm going to tell you about is In a Violent Nature. This is the most recent one I've just watched. I went out to the cinema and watched this. It was so good. The overall filming style was incredible. This is filmed from the perspective of the serial killer. So you're following him along whilst he's stalking out his victims, and it gets emotional at one point. I felt myself very feeling sorry for our character. Um, and yeah, I'm not going to spoil this movie. I feel like it was so good that everybody has to watch this if you're a fan of slashers. This gives you a different perspective, and it is a change in the horror genre. We're not seeing the same overplayed, overused tropes. This one was incredible, so unique, and the level of gore was just up there. It was so good. I really love this movie. As you can tell, I've rated this a 4.5 star. Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I feel like it is so unique, and people need to give this one a chance because it is definitely one that I feel like will grow on a lot of people, and hopefully it gets the attention that it deserves because it is so good. That is my short quickfire round of some of the movies that I've watched recently. I hope you have enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what movies you've watched recently. If you plan on checking out some of these movies as well, do let me know. And I guess until next time, keep your pages turning and embrace the darkness. Bye!